The Labor leader, Anthony Albanese, does join me now. Appreciate you squeezing us in. I know there's a fair bit of ceremony involved.
Thanks very much.
Today.
David had to wait for the national anthem.
Fair enough, fair enough. Look, just on the rate cut, can I just get your views on this? ANZ has passed on the full amount. We had to hear from the other banks in relation to this. What do you think it says, though, about the economy that the Reserve Bank has done this today?
Well, this is a cry for help from the Reserve Bank. They've acted now on monetary policy for 2 months in a row. Quite extraordinary that we have interest rates at 1%. The inflation rate is 1.3. So basically, it not only is money free, it's better than that. And at the height of the global financial crisis, to put this in context, the interest rate was 3%. So we have an absolutely dire circumstance. It's the Reserve Bank. In their statement today, they said this is a key point. They said consumption growth has been subdued, weighed down by a protracted period of low income growth and declining housing prices. So the first thing that they identified was that protracted period of low income growth, wages policy. Now, the government has no policy for wages, and indeed yesterday we saw come in penalty rate cuts for up to 700,000 Australians working in areas like hospitality, by and large low and middle income earners who work on the weekend or work late at night to put food on the table, to pay the school fees, to put petrol in the car. And what we're seeing is economic growth now is down to some 1.8% as well, annual economic growth.
But the Reserve Bank Governor, in fairness, is also saying that the conditions are there for wage. There is already some wage growth coming through and the conditions are there for it to improve. And he says the central scenario for the Australian economy remains reasonable, with growth around trend expected.
Well, 1.8 is not trend.
No.
And that's where growth is at the moment. And what this does is build our case that at the moment what we needed, of course, was for the Parliament to be brought back to have the first lot of income tax cuts through the offset to happen, of all those up to $126,000. But we also need to bring forward, and we'll be moving an amendment in the House of Representatives in an hour or so, to bring forward stage 2, that is the income tax cuts that would benefit by $1,350 for all those above $120,000, regardless of how much they earn, and up to that between 90 and 120 by lifting that rate. Now, if that's good policy in 2022, let me tell you, David, today's decision by the Reserve Bank screams that that's good policy in 2019.
Well, let me
and
ask
the government should do it.
Will you, given this urgent need for some stimulus in the economy, as you put it, will you at any point this week vote against tax cuts for low and middle income earners?
Well, look, we want Category 1 and we want Category 2 as well. We want it brought forward.
And if the price of that is to pass the lot?
We want it brought forward, Dave.
I appreciate that.
The point is, our position, we're the only people arguing in this Parliament, when the debate happens in the House of Representatives, we will be the only people arguing for a tax cut for all Australian workers, not just some, up to $126,000.
But you're also in opposition, you don't have the numbers in the House.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens in the Senate, David. And what we don't do, I'll tell you what we don't do.
Yep.
What we don't do is war game on national TV what happens down the track. What we do
this vote in the House
is argue our case.
This vote in the House is a matter of hours away. Can you tell me, has a decision been made on what you'll do there?
Oh, yes, it has.
And what is that?
Well, we'll move our amendments, we'll vote for them, and then we'll allow the package to go through so that in the Senate it can be dealt with, and the amendments which are receiving... I would have thought today's decision is an opportunity for Matthias Cormann and for the Prime Minister to say, yep, monetary policy can't do all the heavy lifting. That's really what the Reserve Bank is saying by changing the interest rate 2 months in a row. And what they're also saying, what this is also an indicator of, is the idea that today you can say what the economy will look like in 2024, 2025 really looks, quite frankly, absurd.
Right. So you've just said
absurd.
You will allow it to go through the House tonight.
Yes. And we've facilitated debate, frankly,
David. If there's a division, does that mean you'll vote for the package in the House?
In the House, yes, we've made that decision yesterday.
And then in the Senate?
In the full caucus made that decision.
Right.
And we made that decision because one of the things that's happening tonight, of course, normally now we'd all be off to the Governor-General's residence at Yarralumla to have a nice cup of tea and a sausage roll and have a look at the kangaroos jumping around on the lake. Well, not on the lake, on the lakeside. That's been put off. We're facilitating the debate, which importantly cannot happen without our agreement. We wouldn't have been debating
when
it
it
now.
comes to the Senate, will the caucus get another chance to have a say on this?
Well, it's been referred to the shadow cabinet will make the decision. If there isn't time for that.
And have you seriously not made a decision on this yet?
Well, what we've done, David, is made a decision to fight for our amendments. And I'll tell you what today's decision says. Today's decision says that we're right. It says we're right on two fronts. One, that we need to have increased stimulus right now, that we're being economically responsible. And the second thing we're right on is saying that to make a decision this week on tax cuts in 2024, 2025 is a triumph of hope over economic experience and reality.
Isn't it also a triumph of hope over experience to think that oppositions can actually force the government to do this when you don't have the numbers in certainly one of the chambers?
David, Parliament makes decisions all the time. We've had an election on May 18. Guess what? 100% of people didn't vote for the coalition. People were elected to the House and to the Senate. And if what the government's saying...
And what do you think people said, though,
after today?
What did people say in that election to Labor about tax?
Well, what they said, of course, was that in terms of tax, they were concerned about some of our proposals, but by and large it was a negative proposal from the government. Did you hear, I'll ask you this, David, did you hear anyone in the election campaign speak about what would happen in 2024, 2025? And do you think that people watching some of or reading some of the tabloids this week and last week know that they are not actually proposing a tax cut for every Australian worker? The only people who will benefit from the offset is a proportion of the workforce. What we're saying is everyone should get a tax cut this term.
Let me just come back to where I started on tax, though. Is there any chance you'll vote against tax cuts, given what's going on in the economy?
Well, let me say this, David. Is there any chance, to put it the other way, you speak about government responsibility.
Let me try and get an answer on this.
Well,
I want to ask about Labor responsibility,
I'll give you an answer, David. And the answer is this. Is the government really going to, if the stage 2 tax cuts are brought forward and stage 3 is cordoned off, is the government going to say, we're not going to give every worker a tax cut now because there's something that might happen in 2024, 2025. That's the point here, David. One of the things that I'm determined to do with the media is point out, as you point out in some of your questions, that the government's responsibility is to govern. And that will be a decision that the government has to make. And I can't comprehend that they would say, yes, because there's something that might happen, not this term, not next term, but perhaps even the term after, when no one in May was predicting. Show me one economist or one commentator on Sky TV who said there would be a rate cut in June, the next meeting of the Reserve Bank after the election, and another rate cut in July. This is quite extraordinary action from the Reserve Bank. It hasn't happened since 2000 and, well, for many years. I think it's at least half a dozen years. And the fact that interest rates are 1/3 of what they were during the global financial crisis. And when the government spoke a lot about Labor's policy and retirement incomes, have a look at what this decision has had, the impact it's had on those who rely upon interest rates for their income who are retired.
Let me ask you,
this has had a massive impact.
A couple of other issues just quickly. Will Labor support an inquiry into the jobs Christopher Pyne and Julie Bishop have taken in the private sector?
Look, we're examining those matters. Of course, it's up to the Prime Minister to examine whether he thinks there's been a breach of his ministerial code of conduct. The guidelines are quite clear.
Trust him to look into this?
Well, no. Well,
fairly?
we're examining the processes. There are a number of options there. There's the Senate option. There's also an option
Well, Rex Patrick says he got the numbers if Labor's on board.
Well, there's also an option of dealing with this in the House of Representatives, and we're examining those options.
All right, so you're still weighing that one up. The religious freedom, the PM says he wants to talk to you this week about it. I'm not sure if he has already. What are your priorities?
Well, myself and the Prime Minister will have a discussion, and we're able to have discussions without broadcasting what they are. Right. And so we'll have a discussion about a range of issues.
He wants employers should not impinge on areas of private practice and private belief when it comes to religion. Do you agree with that?
Look, I am certainly of the view that people should have the right to practice their faith, and people's faith should be respected.
What about tweeting your religious views if it's offending someone?
That's my starting point. But people also have a responsibility in terms of, in the case that you're probably referring to,
Israel Folau,
have a responsibility to fulfil their contract. This is a dispute about a contract.
So you can't give a blanket protection.
No, well, this is a dispute about a contract. I mean, if you working here for this program go and tweet things that offend a section of the audience, then I think that your employers would take some action on that. So with public profile comes a responsibility. And my concern about Mr Folau's statements that would condemn the overwhelming majority of the Australian population, frankly, to hell, is that a range of the things that he identified are things in which people have a choice over. People don't have a choice over their sexuality. And I certainly don't believe that any true Christian attitude towards people should be about respecting them and respecting who they are. And I don't think that Mr Folau has done that.